What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. It's Thursday, so time for another breakdown. You guys requested this one last week, and I always try to do the ones that you guys want to see the most. So if you've got another decision point you've coming to in drafts with 2-3 players, it can be across positions. We try to keep it to like running backs, wide receivers in general, but it can be. If you get into the third round, you're like, I don't know what to do with this running back or this receiver, we can do some of those as well. So I will post the results from the previous breakdowns on the screen now. I stand by all of these takes as of today, although the Ayuk and Deontay one is basically a tie for me, and I'm very close to moving Ayuk over Deontay, although it is still how I have it on the screen right now. And remember, these are only 2 or 3 player groupings. If you want to see every possible combination, plus players to target, avoid, risk grades, and more, you can check that out at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. So let's get things started off as usual. The stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was which team led the league in first quarter points per game last season. The answer is the Baltimore Ravens, and Rob 40 Mil was the first to get that on YouTube, and I am Sawyer Hebbs was the first to get that on Twitter. Today's stat: who led all wide receivers in lost fumbles last season? All right, so before starting with McLaurin, I want to mention something that is unique to this breakdown in particular. I was about halfway done making the video, and I realized that this one was different in that every single one of these guys is an elite route runner and a clear alpha wide receiver. It's not something that usually happens, so I was a little bit conflicted on like how to proceed. Usually we break down these guys and 1 or 2 of them are exceptional route runners, but maybe one just stands above the rest. One's a clear alpha, one's clearly not. Like there's always something to where we can at least distinguish in order for the quality of receiver they are. But we have 3 guys that rank in like the top 10% in success rate versus man, success rate versus the press. All 3 of them can just dominate the entire route tree. So I'll say this: McLaurin and Keenan Allen have very similar metrics, and I would not give an edge to either of them over the other. Allen Robinson has a little bit better metrics, so I guess you could give him the win in the area. The problem is it really doesn't matter. The difference between being like the 8th best receiver and the 5th best receiver is extremely insignificant, and it shouldn't factor into our decision making at all. So I'm just going to say that they're all elite wide receivers and that talent is not going to be the determining factor for any of them. So we're not going to factor in the talent of each of these receivers when breaking them down for this, because they're all extremely talented. I don't think it's a massive difference maker for us in fantasy. We're going to need to look at their situation, their expected opportunity when making this decision on who to draft. Because if we try and argue which one of them's better than the other, we're not going to get anywhere. They're all elite. We should just leave it at that. So with that being said, let's talk about Terry McLaurin first. So McLaurin is entering his 3rd season and will be 26 when the season starts. So he was a very old rookie. Over his first 2 seasons, he's been incredible though. 5 receptions for 70 yards per game, and he has scored 11 touchdowns over the 2 seasons, despite his team ranking 28th and 29th in touchdown per game over that span. And as far as quarterback play, very few have had it worse than McLaurin. The only quarterbacks he's caught passes from in the NFL are Alex Smith, Dwayne Haskins, Kyle Allen, Tyler Heineke, Chase Keenum, and Colt McCoy. That is absolutely absurd. And it just makes the start to his career, that much more impressive. So how has he been able to just overcome this horrible quarterback play? So like I said to start the video, he's an elite wide receiver, pretty much unguardable in man coverage, can run the entire route tree, and so he doesn't need incredible quarterback play to produce. He's good enough to elevate his quarterback, which is not something we see all the time. But this season, there's finally reason for optimism to where he doesn't need to elevate his quarterback play. Fitzmagic is coming to town, and while he's not regarded as like a high-end quarterback, He's by far the best quarterback that McLaurin has played with, and he has supported high-end fantasy seasons for his wide receivers in the past and in the recent past. The biggest boost will be in his willingness to move the ball downfield. Alex Smith was probably the best quarterback that McLaurin had played with, but he never pushes the ball downfield, and so McLaurin's ceiling was capped when he was playing with him. With Fitz in town, the upside is finally unlocked, and I do expect him to have multiple blow-up games this season, and I do think that Fitz, McLaurin, Curtis Samuel stack is my favorite right now in best ball drafts, which of course you should sign up on Underdog using promo code FFA so you can get you $25 in free drafts. But I really think that is my favorite stack right now. It's Fitz, McLaurin, and Curtis Samuel. So those are the positives with McLaurin. Elite talent, high upside route tree, so he doesn't just run these yards like 5 yards downfield. He does work downfield, and a massive upgrade at quarterback. As for the negatives, all I can really think of is Curtis Samuel, right? I mean, he's also an incredibly talented wide receiver, and there's at least a possibility that he sees more targets than you would like as a McLaurin owner. If McLaurin is going to compete with Allen Robinson, with Keenan Allen, then he's going to need to push for about 100 receptions because that's where they're going to be around. And there's definitely a chance that Samuel takes enough looks to keep McLaurin closer to 85 or 90 receptions, which might not be enough to pass those two. But we do still need to break down Allen Robinson and Keenan Allen first so we can do the final rankings. So next up, we're going to do Allen Robinson. Robinson will be entering his 8th season this year, although he's still going to be just 28. So he's played 5 more seasons than McLaurin, but he's only 2 years older since he was 21 as a rookie compared to being 24 for McLaurin. This will be his 4th season with the Bears, and he's really come alive these last 2 years, averaging 100 receptions, 1,200 yards, 6.5 touchdowns, finishing as a low-end wide receiver 1 in both seasons. Robinson's story has been very similar to that of McLaurin. Both are elite talents, both have produced despite horrible quarterback play. There's an argument to be made that Blake Bortles is like the best quarterback Allen Robinson has played with, and if that's not the case, then it's one of Foles or Trubisky, which is just sad to think about, right? The best quarterback he's played with is one of like Bortles, Trubisky, or Foles. I mean, that's just so unfortunate, right? Just like with McLaurin, though, he should be getting an upgrade this season. Now, if we're talking about confidence, I will say that I have more confidence that Fitzpatrick will be a quality to maybe like above average quarterback this season than I do Justin Fields. I absolutely think Justin Fields will have a good career and is going to elevate his weapons in the future. But if we're just talking about this season, I have more confidence that Fitz will do that than Fields. Also, there's a narrative out there that Fields is some like hyper-mobile quarterback and that Robinson won't see as many targets because Fields is just scrambling every play. But that's not like really true. I mean, he for sure can scramble and he is electric with the ball in his hands, but he's not Lamar Jackson, who's really the only quarterback where this is a problem. Plus, Trubisky scrambled a ton and Robinson still produced plenty with him at quarterback. So I'm not concerned that Fields' mobility is like this big problem for Allen Robinson. He's by far the best pure passer Robinson has played with. And the only question is, how quickly can he develop? The final receiver we'll break down before wrapping this all up is Keenan Allen. He'll be entering his 9th season at age 29, and he's coming off 4 very impressive seasons, averaging 100 receptions, 1,200 yards, 6.5 touchdowns. And if those numbers sound familiar, it's because that's exactly what Allen Robinson has averaged these last 2 seasons. And for those worried about injuries with Keenan Allen, don't be. He's suffered a few random injuries early in his career, but they could have happened to anyone. They were not indicative of being injury prone. They're not going to impact him going forward. I mean, he's been a model of health for like 4 straight seasons now. So he is not an injury risk. As far as his situation, it's very similar to last season, right? Herbert's still the quarterback, Mike Williams still number 2, Eckler's still the running back, and then they're going to rotate in like the remaining targets around them. Yes, he loses Hunter Henry, but they're going to have other tight ends. I don't really think the target share is going to be all that different than it was last season. Allen is probably just going to do what he always does. Provide an extremely stable floor while also showing a high weekly ceiling, especially in PPR leagues. I mean, he had 3 games last season with at least 10 receptions for 125 yards and a touchdown while commanding 19 targets in 2 of those games. And speaking of targets, he averaged 11.8 targets per game in the 12 weeks that he played at least 40% of the snaps. That's a 17-week pace, because remember, 17 weeks this season, of over 200 targets. In this offense, Allen could push for the league-leading targets, and he did show some touchdown upside with 8 last season. So they're all awesome. Like, let's be honest, all of them are targets. All of them are players that I want to get on my team. But if they're all on the board and your pick is up, who are you going with? If we're being honest, it's very, very close, but I'll say that I feel good about putting McLaurin third. We're basically hoping that he can do what Allen Robinson and Keenan Allen have been doing for years now. Like, he has still not produced a season that has been the average for Allen Robinson and Keenan Allen these last 2 and 4 years. So it's much more speculative, and I just feel pretty good saying that he's going to be third on this list. Between Allen Robinson and Keenan Allen, I wanted to see who could have the higher touchdown ceiling, since both of them have pretty much the exact same projection between the 20s, and if one has a higher touchdown ceiling, then I'd lean towards them. Each of the last 2 seasons, Allen Robinson has seen slightly more work inside the 20 and inside the 10. It's been a very small difference though, but more targets, more in terms of like total and share of their team offense. But technically now Hunter Henry being gone does help Keenan Allen, since he had the second most targets inside the red zone, most inside the 10. So I think this is a wash. I mean, I doubt that's going to have a major impact on Keenan Allen, but he's only been behind Allen Robinson by like 1 or 2 targets a season. They're virtually the same. They're getting the exact same work, close to the goal line. I just think they have the exact same touchdown upside. So if everything is a tie between these two, how do we break the tie? I basically think it comes down to these 2 questions. 1, how much risk is there in having a new offensive coordinator in LA, and how is that going to impact the offense? And more specifically, how is that going to impact Justin Herbert in his second season? Second, how much risk is there that Justin Fields won't be a league average quarterback? Because if he's a below average quarterback, well, then that's a concern. I know that Allen Robinson's been playing with very below average quarterbacks, but if he's not getting the upgrade there, maybe we lean towards Keenan Allen. To me, there is more risk that Herbert will not perform well under a new offensive system than there is Fields being below average. Young quarterbacks don't have the best track record when they change their offensive coordinators. So when you also throw in the fact that Justin Herbert is due for some negative regression. He was a little bit lucky in statistics that are not sticky year over year. Like, if he was great in everything, well, maybe he's going to just be a fantastic quarterback. But he was very, very good to potentially ranking number 1 in a few categories that are a little bit higher variance, a little bit less sticky year over year. And so it's certainly possible. I'm not saying it's going to happen. But it's certainly possible that just on average, Herbert sees a little bit of regression. And if you add in, he's not going to have the same offensive coordinator. Well, now we have a situation where maybe they're changing target distributions. Maybe they're changing volume in the offense. Maybe he doesn't fit well with this new system. Talking about Herbert there, and he regresses even more and has a bad season. I just think all of these things are possibilities. And when I'm comparing that risk to the risk that Justin Fields, who I think is going to be a fantastic quarterback, is below average and like worse than what, Trubisky and Foles have been, I just think that's a lot less likely to happen. So I'm going to rank it Allen Robinson first, Keenan Allen second, Terry McLaurin third. But again, it is so close between Allen Robinson and Keenan Allen, and you should always draft based off of what you believe. So if you do believe that Herbert is a great quarterback and he's going to be awesome this season, and you think that Fields is being somewhat overrated, then absolutely draft Keenan Allen. I'm like splitting hairs here. They're both incredible. I'm just giving you my take, and you got to do what you want with it. So that is my breakdown for this video. I will post the results on the screen again so you can see that, and I will link all of them in the description box down below if you want to check out any breakdown in particular. Remember to post the breakdown you want to see in the comment section down below and upvote the suggestions that you like, because I want to do the breakdowns you guys want to see the most. And as always, you can view my exact take on every single player along with my top targets, avoids, sleepers, all at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. That's the end of this one. Hope you all did enjoy. If you did, then how about hitting that like button, and how about subscribing to the channel if you're new? But thanks for watching.